Welcome to the Pencil Bob channel. I hope you enjoy my stories. Please like and subscribe, and hit that notification icon so you never miss out. Now on with the stories.
Entitled neighbors. It's hard to believe I'm in this situation, facing off against the most entitled neighbors I've ever encountered. It all started when I moved into this community, excited for a fresh start and a peaceful living environment. Boy, was I in for a surprise. My next-door neighbor, a single mom with 2 grown adult children, seemed nice enough at first. We exchanged pleasantries, and I thought we'd get along just fine. But then the parking issues began. It started with small incidents. I'd come home from work tired and ready to relax, only to find one of their cars parked in my spot. At first, I tried to be understanding. Maybe they didn't realize it was my designated space. So I sent a polite text to the mom explaining the situation. "Hey there, I noticed one of your cars is in my parking spot. Would you mind moving it? Thanks." I got a half-hearted apology and a promise it wouldn't happen again. But it did. Again and again. Then they started blocking my driveway. I'd be running late for work, keys in hand, only to find I couldn't even get out of my own driveway. It was infuriating. I tried talking to them face to face, hoping a personal conversation would resolve the issue. I knocked on their door one evening, plastering on a friendly smile despite my frustration. "Hi there," I said when the mom answered. "I wanted to chat about the parking situation. It's been causing me some problems." She looked at me with an expression that was part confusion, part annoyance. "What parking situation?" I explained about the blocked driveway and the use of my spot. She nodded along, but I could tell she wasn't really listening. "Oh, that," she said dismissively. "Well, we just need somewhere to park when we have guests over. It's not a big deal, is it?" I was taken aback by her nonchalant attitude. "Actually, it is a big deal. I need to be able to get in and out of my own driveway, and I pay for my parking spot." She rolled her eyes. "Fine, whatever, we'll try to be more careful." But nothing changed. I kept sending texts, kept trying to talk to them, but it was like talking to a brick wall. They just didn't care. Finally, after months of this nonsense, I'd had enough. I decided to report the issue to the HOA president. I felt a bit like a tattletale, but what else could I do? I'd tried everything else. I sent an email detailing the ongoing issues, complete with dates and times of incidents. The HOA president was sympathetic and promised to address the problem. A few days later, an email went out to the entire community. It was a general reminder about various community rules, but there was a specific section about parking. It stated clearly that residents should only park in their own spots or designated areas. I felt a mix of relief and anxiety when I read it. Relief that something was finally being done, but anxiety about how my neighbors would react. They weren't stupid. They'd know I was the one who complained. Sure enough, the next time I saw the adult children, they avoided eye contact and quickly ducked into their house. The mom, on the other hand, gave me a look that could curdle milk. I thought that would be the end of it, but oh no, a few days later, I was getting ready for some friends to come over when I noticed a car in my spot. It was the mom's mother, an elderly lady I'd seen visiting a few times before. Sighing heavily, I went outside to deal with the situation. The old lady was just getting out of her car when I approached. "Excuse me," I said, trying to keep my voice calm and polite. "I'm sorry, but you can't park here. This is my spot, and I have guests coming over soon." She looked at me like I'd just insulted her entire family. "I'm only going to be here for a minute. My daughter is pulling out of her driveway, and then I'll move into her spot." I shook my head. "I understand, but there's plenty of street parking just a minute's walk away. Could you please use that instead?" She huffed and puffed, muttering under her breath as she got back into her car. I stood there, watching to make sure she actually moved. As she drove away, I saw my neighbor glaring at me from her window. Great. Now I was the bad guy for enforcing the rules. Since then, they haven't blocked me or used my spot, which is a relief. But the tension is thick enough to cut with a knife. The adult children practically run away when they see me coming. The mom gives me dirty looks whenever our paths cross. I was venting about all this to a friend over coffee one day. "I just don't get it," I said, stirring my latte aggressively. "Why is it so hard for them to park on the street like everyone else?" My friend shrugged. "Some people just feel entitled to do whatever they want. They don't care how it affects others. But it's literally a 1-minute walk from the street to their house," I exclaimed, probably a bit too loudly judging by the looks from nearby tables. "Is that really such an inconvenience?" "For entitled people, absolutely," my friend said with a wry smile. "Now, we've got an HOA meeting coming up next week. The president told me he's going to bring up the parking issue again, to reinforce the rules. Part of me wants to speak up, to tell my side of the story to all my neighbors. But another part of me is worried it'll just make things worse. I've been going back and forth on what to do. Should I say something? Should I just let the HOA president handle it? It's been keeping me up at night, honestly. The night before the meeting, I was tossing and turning, replaying different scenarios in my head. What if I spoke up and everyone sided with my neighbors? What if I stayed quiet and the problem started up again? What if the neighbors accused me of harassment or something? By the time morning rolled around, I was a bundle of nerves. I got dressed for the meeting, my stomach in knots. As I locked my front door, I saw my neighbors leaving their house too. We all pretended not to see each other as we walked to the community center. The meeting room was already buzzing with conversation when I arrived. I took a seat near the back, not wanting to draw attention to myself. My neighbors sat on the opposite side of the room, pointedly looking anywhere but at me. The HOA president called the meeting to order, and we went through the usual business: budget reports, landscaping updates, all the thrilling stuff that comes with homeownership. I was only half listening, my mind preoccupied with the parking issue. Finally, the president got to the topic I'd been dreading and anticipating. Now, I want to address some concerns that have been brought to my attention regarding parking, he began. I could feel my neighbor's eyes boring into me. I kept my gaze fixed on the president, trying to look calm and collected. I sent out an email a few weeks ago reminding everyone of our parking rules, he continued. But I want to reiterate them here. Each home has designated parking spots either in your garage, driveway, or assigned spaces. These are for your use only, not for guests or visitors. There were a few nods around the room. I risked a glance at my neighbors. The mom was whispering furiously to her daughter, who looked uncomfortable. Guests should use street parking, the president went on. I know it might be a slight inconvenience, but it's necessary to ensure everyone has access to their own spaces. We've had some issues with people using other spots or blocking driveways. This needs to stop. I could feel the tension in the room ratcheting up. A few people were looking around, trying to figure out who the culprits might be. Does anyone have any questions or comments about this? The president asked. This was my moment. I could speak up, tell my side of the story. But as I opened my mouth, I hesitated. What good would it really do? The problem had mostly stopped already. Would bringing it up again just create more drama? Before I could decide, my neighbor's hand shot up. The president nodded at her. Yes, Karen, she stood up, her face flushed. I just want to say that some people are being ridiculous about this whole parking thing. It's not a big deal if someone uses your spot for a few minutes. We should be more understanding of each other's needs. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My hands clenched into fists under the table. The president frowned. Karen, the rules are clear. We can't have people using other spots even for a few minutes. It causes problems and conflicts. But what if someone has mobility issues? Karen pressed. My mother visits often, and she can't walk far. Were we supposed to make her park on the street? I couldn't stay silent any longer. I stood up, my heart pounding. There are designated handicap spots for people with mobility issues, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. And if someone needs special accommodations, they can request them from the HOA, but that doesn't give anyone the right to use someone else's spot without permission. Karen whirled to face me, her eyes flashing. Oh, so you're the one who's been complaining? I should have known. You've been nothing but trouble since you moved in. The room erupted into murmurs and whispers. I felt my face growing hot, but I stood my ground. I've only asked that you respect the rules we all agreed to when we moved here. How is that being trouble? Ladies, please, the president interjected. This is exactly the kind of conflict we're trying to avoid. The rules are in place for a reason, and they apply to everyone equally. Karen wasn't done. It's just parking. Why are you making such a big deal out of it? Are you really so selfish that you can't let someone use your spot occasionally? That was it. All the frustration and anger I'd been holding back came pouring out. Selfish? You're calling me selfish? You've been using my spot and blocking my driveway for months. I've asked you politely multiple times to stop, and you've ignored me. You're the one being selfish, thinking the rules don't apply to you. The room fell silent. Everyone was staring at us wide-eyed. I realized I was shaking, my hands gripping the back of my chair so hard my knuckles were white. Karen opened her mouth to retort, but the president cut her off. That's enough, he said firmly. This is exactly why we have these rules in place. Karen, you and your family need to respect your neighbor's parking space and stop blocking driveways. If you need special accommodations for your mother, we can discuss that separately. But for now, the rules stand as they are. Karen sat down with a huff, her face red with anger and embarrassment. I slowly sank back into my seat, feeling drained. The rest of the meeting passed in a blur. When it was over, people filed out quickly, eager to escape the lingering tension. As I gathered my things, I overheard snippets of conversation. "Can you believe that, Karen? I always suspected they were the ones causing trouble. Poor new neighbor having to deal with that." I felt a mix of vindication and exhaustion. As I headed for the door, the HOA president caught my eye and gave me a small nod. I nodded back, grateful for his support. Outside, I saw Karen and her family huddled together, whispering furiously. They glared at me as I passed. I had a feeling this wasn't over, that they'd find other ways to make my life difficult. But for now, at least, I'd stood up for myself. I'd made my voice heard. And maybe, just maybe, they'd think twice before trying to take advantage of me or anyone else again. As I walked home, I couldn't help but wonder what new challenges tomorrow would bring. Living in this community was turning out to be far more dramatic than I'd ever anticipated. But I was determined to stand my ground, to fight for what was right, no matter what entitled neighbors might throw my way. I totally get where you're coming from, but I think it's best to let sleeping dogs lie at this point. The HOA reminder seems to have done the trick, so bringing it up again might just stir the pot unnecessarily. You don't want to come across as that neighbor who's always complaining, you know. If you feel like you absolutely must say something, maybe just a quick thank you to the board for addressing the issue would suffice. Keep it short, sweet, and positive. Remember, you still have to live next to these people, so maintaining a civil relationship is key. Focus on the fact that the problem has been resolved, and try to move forward. Who knows, maybe your neighbors have learned their lesson and things will improve from here on out. You know, I think this is a perfect opportunity to show some appreciation for the HOA board. These folks often deal with a ton of complaints and rarely get any thanks for their efforts. Why not use your speaking time to express gratitude for their hard work? Something like, "I just wanted to take a moment to thank the board for their dedication to our community. Your recent handling of the parking issue was particularly helpful." This approach accomplishes two things. It subtly acknowledges the parking problem without directly calling anyone out, and it puts you in a positive light with the board and your neighbors. Plus, a little kindness goes a long way. You might be surprised how much impact a sincere thank you can have. It could even set a positive tone for future interactions with your neighbors and the board. In situations like these, it's often best to take the high road. The parking issue seems to have been resolved, so rehashing it at the meeting might come across as petty or confrontational. Instead, consider using this as an opportunity to foster better community relations. Maybe you could speak up about the importance of neighborly consideration and following community guidelines without specifically mentioning the parking incident. Something like, "I've really come to appreciate how smoothly things run when we all follow the HOA rules. It makes for a more harmonious community." This way, you're reinforcing the importance of the rules without singling anyone out. It might even encourage other neighbors to be more mindful in the future. Remember, the goal is to live peacefully in your community, not to win every battle.
I would like to thank you for watching the video to the end. To encourage us to make more videos, please like, subscribe, comment, as well as share. Check out this other video if you haven't already.